Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie McCready, and I am a coach for alienated parents. And I'm delighted that we have Ashlyn here today. I personally find Ashlyn very inspirational. She's a very brave young lady. She was alienated as a young child, right the way through into her young adulthood. And she has very kindly come along and offered to share her experiences with us so that you as parents can learn from it and ideally have better outcomes for your children. So maybe we can start with you giving us a little bit of background as to kind of your alienation experience.
I know that my mother comes from a very abusive home, very mentally traumatized person. Just my mom wasn't emotionally able to be healthy in a relationship and was very cruel to my dad. And my dad had enough, and he wanted to take care of me because he knew my mom was very not healthy person. So he went to the family court system to fight for full custody of me when I was only I think I was less than a year old. My mom had the favor of the family court system, and she kind of turned everybody against my dad and said that he wasn't a good dad, he didn't care about me. So people favored my mom, and my mom also has the persona of being very healthy, very upbeat, friendly, all of that. But underneath that kind of mask is a very traumatized, very got a lot of problems underneath them. My dad was fighting in the court system, and then my mom said that she was going to make his life hell. My dad tried to eventually go for shared custody, but my mom didn't want to make it work. She wanted me herself. He made a very hard decision that my mom was already winning, and the court system wasn't favoring him. So he decided to let me go to my mom, even though he didn't want that.
So many parents are doing this. It's a very great act of love and selflessness that a parent is prepared to step back because he loved you so much that he didn't want to see you hurt or harmed in any way, and would rather you not be caught in the middle of that fight.
My dad knew that if he did have shared custody, my mom was going to make things worse for me. Before the divorce was final with my dad, she was already preparing me to have a different dad. So she gave him the papers and said, sign this. And so he wanted me to have a father figure in my life. So he signed.
Did you have memories of your dad, or was it all just the narrative that your mom and what your new dad had told you rather than anything you could remember yourself?
Yeah, I was too young. I was only a couple months old. My dad couldn't stand living in the house because my mom was breaking his stuff and was constantly being cruel with words and stuff. And so he ended up staying at a shelter. But I was always told by people who wanted to believe my mom's side of the story, whatever she told them, that he didn't want you, he didn't come to your first birthday, all of these things. It's really hard for me to talk about who's my dad and who's not, because one was in my life, but one was pushed out of my life. So it's hard for me to process that. I was always told by people, oh yeah, your mom's a saint. Yeah, just a constant narrative. And I didn't have photos in my photo album. My mom kept gifts that my dad tried to send me. She never gave them to me throughout my childhood. So I didn't know that he had cared. My mom had told me that my dad didn't want a daughter, that he didn't like girls, and that he left. And that was the constant narrative I was told.
You were told that he wasn't somebody who really cared about you and abandoned you effectively. So how did you come to a point of I guess realizing that you've been alienated, or what made you curious about reaching out to your dad? Kind of how did that work?
Well, my mom pretty much drilled in a lot of hatred in me. It was your father's a loser, your father didn't want you, your father, all of these things. And so it was drilled into me, and that's all I understood about.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it made me feel like a loser, because if my dad is a part of me, then my mom is attacking a part of who I am. Yeah, I wanted to be more like my mom because of it. Because I was wow, she's so amazing. She loved me. She was all of this. So I didn't want anything to do with connection to my dad. So it fueled the hatred in me. It was like I was already being turned into this kind of like weapon. I never questioned it because my mom had kept information from me. She twisted everything. She didn't tell me my dad had fought for full custody. She didn't tell me he got gifts for me. It took a very long time for me to start to question or even feel comfortable to start thinking about my past, because it's like a can of worms. It's like, you know, there's probably something there, but you don't want to open it because it hurt.
Because basically there was a lot of trauma there. That was a mechanism for you to protect yourself, not to go near there, because it would mean you potentially exposing yourself to kind of hurt and all those negative feelings. I can understand why you wouldn't want to engage with that. But then you did. I mean, this is one of the most amazing things. So what happened that made you think, actually, I would like to reach out to my dad after all the bad things you've been told about him?
Well, it started probably when I was in high school. My mom said something to me that didn't quite match up the story I was heard for 22 years at the time, where like it was like, oh, I wanted to keep you for myself. And I was like, what? That's a weird thing to say. But I didn't want to question it. So I was like, oh, yeah, like I knew it's just something there, but I didn't question. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep that like anger and hurt. So the thing that changed for me was like seeing my mom as she truly is, being older and wiser and have experience with my mom. Because my mom, as I mentioned earlier, she's very traumatized. And I feel sorry for her because she didn't deserve, nobody deserves that kind of treatment. Even if they treat other people bad, I wish them well. Yeah, so I started noticing that her behavior was very controlling, manipulative. She would lie a lot.
Were these things you'd kind of progressively come to understand about your mum, or was there some big wake-up call when you were 22?
I think it was progressively, like, as I got older and older, it became more and more clear. It was just everything in the house was controlled by her. Like everything that we did, or any image of what the family's supposed to look like, you know, it's supposed to be like a happy family. But if you tell anybody what's really going inside the house, then it's like my mom turns into like, what is it, Dr. Jekyll and Hyde? It's like a different side of her comes. So that was a big wake up call for me, because I had done something to try to get help for my family. And when that happened, my mom had the worst and most scary reactions that I've ever experienced or seen from her or heard. And like, I was terrified of my mom. Her behavior, like, it's awful. And then I'm like, I started looking at the relationship my mom has with my dad that raised me. And I saw how very much she's just quiet and lets her do whatever she wants. And then I was like, it's not healthy.
Were you and your stepdad basically afraid of your mum, you know, or afraid of upsetting her, or
Yeah,
you know?
I think my dad hides it. Like my dad that raised me, I think he hid it because he wants to please her. And it was very codependent, very, you know, toxic relationship. But me, like, yeah, I was very afraid of her because like any little thing I did, like, there would be a punishment. Like it started getting worse. I think her mental health got worse as the years progressed. And it was like her empathy wasn't there. Like she didn't have empathy.
And what sorts of things would she do to punish you?